Oh, in love, come outside with me. Let's get some privacy, losing control. Oh, I'm losing, feeling kind of reckless, and I don't wanna mess this up. I'll mess it up. I just want your body, I just want your mind expressed to me. I wanna make you happy. I just want your body, I just want your mind explain to me. Hold me, and oh, baby, I've been thinking about you nearly every night this week. And oh, if you like that, I can be a freak for you, for you.
Hey. Una nena como tú, así quería yo, que comiera bien, veo todo, recomendó. Se va a poner contento cuando le enseñé la foto. Me dice, me grito loco, pero eres un modo. Y que tú te pasas a casa, se ve que arriba en arraso. Quiero llevarte a casa, si de lo guay de la paz. Y parando toda la noche, pero ten cuidado si me tranca. Tu vida no fue moneta vuelta, creo que has vuelto loca, chica, venga.
And hello, and welcome to this wonderful Lunchtime on LinkedIn session. Here we are again. Today, I am so excited to be talking to Tracey Carter. I'm going to introduce you to her in a minute, but let me just first of all say what these conversations, these sessions are for. My name is Fanny Snaith. I am a certified money coach, and I help people, individuals and couples who find managing their money difficult or stressful. And I help them to feel more confident. I help them have competence around their money and clarity around their financial situation so that they can feel so much more contented with it. And I do it in a really simple way with a very, very easy framework and using a language that everybody can understand. And most importantly, I make it fun. So these conversations are here to create the very first step to becoming an excellent money manager. And that is to be able to talk about it, to actually open the door to a conversation about money. So what I decided to do was to host these sessions at lunchtime and just invite normal, fantastic, financial people from all walks of life to join me to just have a conversation about the normal everyday things that happen around money and in our lives and how it affects our lives. So today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to Tracey Carter. I met Tracey at the Evo networking, and I looked at the title and I thought, yeah, all right, some bird coming on talking about something to do with something. And then Tracey gave us her talk and told us her story about her work, etc. And I was completely blown away. I then invited her to come to Evo Women, and we've been friends ever since, haven't we, Tracey?
We have, Fanny, yes.
Great. So I'm not going to tell everybody who you are, what you do. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, well, tell me a little bit about your story about when I first met you. Do you want to tell us about that?
Okay, so I'll go back to almost a kind of previous me. So my whole career has been in local authority. So I've kind of always worked for a local authority where my job was to kind of serve the public and kind of serve the people I was working with. And I guess, so I worked there for just over 30 years, 25 years as a director, where I managed a range of different services. The great thing about that was I would go in to manage a new service, not know anything about it. So you had to kind of learn on your feet, but it enabled you to think out the box and not be stuck with tradition.
Right.
The best bit, I think, for me was kind of towards the end of my career there. I set up a company from scratch. So the local authority went down a road of having a vision to be more entrepreneurial, and we set up what was known then as the Bristol Waste company.
Yeah.
So we had to create it from scratch, put in all of our own financial systems, and we had 450 staff transfer over from the previous contractor.
I mean, that's a lot of staff, right?
It was, and no managers. So
no managers.
the day we went live, when the staff transferred over, and we had to go live on the Monday with collecting everybody's bins around Bristol, their recycling and everything else. And we were all down in the yard sticking stickers on the trucks to say we were now Bristol Waste and not the previous company.
Okay.
But the thing I think that was important to me is we were setting up a new company, which we were there to reduce the cost to the local authority, but it was also about our sense of purpose, about actually wasting nothing and getting the public on board with us in the kind of journey. But it was also about respect for the staff and creating a place where people were valued, where they could develop themselves, and where, you know, we had our own kind of sense of values and we had our purpose and we delivered and we made the profits we needed to make for the authority.
Okay. So when you're talking about setting up a company of that size, let's try and put something in perspective, because this is the thing. I haven't worked in an office for the last 20 years, so I find it quite difficult to, you know, to sort of conceptualize it really. I mean, yes, I used to work in an office with a team, etc. So I get that, but not something of that size. What sort, are you able to say what sort of budgets you were looking at?
Yeah, it was a £40 million budget we had. The first year it was about 23 million. And then we increased it after the end of the first year, when we took on more services linked to waste, so the disposal and everything else. So in total, it was about 40 million. So we had big budgets, we had big machinery, lots of health and safety issues, but we had to manage our budgets in terms, and when we went live with this at the beginning, I didn't have a clue what things were going to come out of the woodwork and what costs there were going to be. So I can remember starting it in the first year with being really tight. You know, we wouldn't spend money unless we had to,
right.
Because I didn't know what was going to come at me. But actually, as it turned out, we made big savings on different contracts. So it was all about, you know, looking at what we were getting, what we were paying for, and were we getting value for money, and then managing that as effectively as we could.
Okay. And what percentage of your workforce would you say were men?
The majority, because, you know, so in the 450, we would have had probably, so that was the main workforce, and then we had to create all the back office staff and the managers. So we would have had, in the workforce, we would have had about 15, 20 tops females.
Women.
Yeah.
So how did you find that? Were you used to that in your previous role, such a male heavy dominated?
Yeah, because I used to manage all parks and green spaces and stuff. So I've always managed a kind of a very labour manual kind of type workforce, which I love doing. And they are.
Why do you love doing that? Why do you love that?
I feel at home. So my dad in when I was growing up, he worked on the refuse. He was a bin man, you know.
No, you told me that.
No, well, you just don't think about it, do you? So I used to call him a refuse loader, because, you know, bin men you kind of would be a bit embarrassed about. But actually, the funny thing is when I took over Bristol Waste, because my dad had worked there many years before, a lot of the staff knew my dad, so they would refer to me as kind of like Sir Trace. And so it made it much more of a kind of a family feeling. So I could make tough decisions, but I could do it very fairly, and I could have an open door policy, and they could talk to me. And I think it was because I come from the same place as most of them, so I'm on the same level as them. Yes, I've now got a more important job, but that's all it is. As people, we're exactly the same.
I love that. And I think you told me the other day as well, was, you know, you went out on the bins occasionally, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. The one thing I kind of felt I needed to do was go out and try the different jobs that people did.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, to be fair to those guys, I did it for like half a day and I was knackered. And I remember one morning I went out with the refuse guys, and we were walking around the streets at 7 o'clock in the morning, kind of getting all the bins out to load up onto the bin and kind of turn them. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at my watch, and it was 8 o'clock, and I wanted to cry, and I'm thinking, it's raining, it's 8 o'clock, I've only done an hour. And so they do that every single day. And sometimes those guys were picking up recycling and stuff, and they're having to deal with lots of really horrible, crappy things.
Yeah. I love that approach to it, you know. I mean, I think your approach to the managerial style of, you know, getting your hands in the clay and really holding it in the way that you want it to, and actually realizing, taking on board that, you know, we are all the same. We're just in different jobs. Is I think is something that needs to be a little bit more widespread, don't you think?
Absolutely. I don't think there's enough of it, and I still see lots of bad management going on, you know. And I kind of, you know, if I look back, I don't think I did it properly, and I don't think I did it fully enough. But the whole servant leadership style for me is what I love and kind of what I want to promote. You know, I want more and more people to bring that in, where they're there to serve others, not serve themselves.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, I remember when I worked in market research and I ran a telephone room and had 45 booths in there, I would always every day get on the telephone and complete at least one survey every day. You've got to, because if you're not, you know, you've got to keep that going. So when it comes to, I mean, obviously when you're in that kind of position, you have to make some tough decisions. And sometimes what can happen is, you know, you're in the position of power. You're essentially holding these guys' jobs in your hands to a certain extent. And you know, you can't always make decisions to please everybody, right? So how do you broach that? How do you get through those parts when you do have to make difficult decisions?
So the most difficult decisions you have to make is when you're doing disciplinaries and stuff, and you're kind of hearing somebody appeal maybe a decision that's been made to dismiss them. And bearing in mind, you've also got to kind of delegate that authority down the chain of command, that you entrust your managers to do the right things, and that doesn't always happen either. So I would always find that when I was in a disciplinary hearing meeting and the trade unions would come and they'd put the case, I would always try and look at it from a point of view is, okay, what they've done is wrong. Are they genuinely sorry they've done it and been caught? And would they have learnt from this and then not do it again? And I think sometimes I had to kind of uphold the decision because either you could see that they didn't think it was serious enough or anything, but other times I would turn that decision around. And I would often, more importantly, I think, is when I've caught people doing things they shouldn't be doing. And I've stopped and I've kind of gone back. I've walked around to where they are and I've gone, why have you just done what you've done? And I remember a guy saying to me, did you see that? And I said, yeah. And I said, you go back and you put that right now, you know? And he did. And I didn't do any more about it because I told him, in fact, that bloke, I think I told him twice, you know, but I think there's an element where you've got some things you've got to tell him, but you don't take it any further.
It's human, isn't it?
Yeah. I think sometimes people get overawed by the power.
Well, exactly. So, and where money lies, sometimes power can be taken on. And I think this is sort of one of the really lovely things about you, Tracey, and the fact, you know, oh yeah, well, I've got a budget of 40 million, but yet you're still dealing with people like people. You're not sitting in some bloody ivory tower barking orders. We've got a couple of comments up. Let me just have a look and see them. So Mia has said, I love how Tracey, I saw Mia at a networking meeting this morning. She's lovely. She's practicing mindfulness and she does some really lovely workshops. That's Maria Middleton. I love how Tracey built that trust with her workforce by really understanding her organisation from the ground level. So that's good. And Alison has said, I was just thinking the same thing, Maria. Everything is based on trusted relationships wherever we are.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at a business, right, which is, let's face it, we all go to work and business is revolves around money. Service, money's got to keep the whole thing going on. So let's turn a little bit more towards the money, because that's what we're sort of trying to talk about here. And with obviously you're coming up the ranks, right? So you didn't suddenly land from the sky and end in an MD role. Obviously, you know, you had to find yourself getting to that position. How important do you think, this might be a bit of a tricky question to hit you with, really. So how important do you think your money management skills and your relationship to money, how important was that as you were going up the ranks? And the reason I'm asking you this is because, every day we hear of imposter syndrome. We hear of people who think, I'd never be able to do a management job because it's all too complicated with money. I personally applied for a job once at the BBC, and went into the interview, and they told me that my budget was going to be something like 6 million or something. And I have to say, it took me aback. And my first thought was, I could never deal with that kind of money. So where is your relationship with money and how you deal with money when somebody's hitting you with 40 million quid? How does that feel, and how do you make it work?
So I come from a background where personally I've had no money. We grew up on a council estate, didn't have a lot of money. So I knew from a very early age that if I wanted to have money, I would have to work bloody hard for it. And so from a personal point of view, I always knew that I wanted money because I never had it. So I valued money. And from an early stage, when I got my first job, I worked in finance and in payroll.
Does that help though?
Yes. So money, and I think, if I'm honest, when I was at school, I always did better on maths and accounts than I did on English. So finances has probably been in my blood, throughout my kind of life. But I also, in the different jobs I did when I worked in the local authority, I always managed the departmental budgets. So I would manage the kind of housing revenue account, which would have been 200 million. Yeah. So it would have been huge sums of money.
And is it just like adding another digit, really? Yeah,
because I think it's not my money. If it was my money, I might have a different issue, but it's not my money. It's big budgets we're managing. So you just see it as that you're paying lots for different services and stuff, but you've still got to manage it. So whether I'm managing my budget of £1,000 or a £40 million budget, it's still the same principles.
Okay, so you said something interesting there. You said, if it was my money, it might be different. Would it be different?
No, because it'd be a nice problem to have that I had 40 million and I had to kind of worry about how I was going to spend it. But actually, it's really interesting because I've been in a good job. So as a managing director, I earned £100,000 a year, so I've been in that place, But my money was always important in terms of how I supported my family.
Okay.
So that was a key drive for me. But I wouldn't spend on myself. So all of my life, I've been about spending on, my mum from a young age to kind of my kids now. And because I would be frugal with myself, but not with others, there's some lessons in that for me as well.
So, I work with the 8 money types.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the reasons we were talking about before we came on today was that one of the money types is called the innocent, which is just to fill people in. I work with the 8 money types that I learned at the Money Coaching Institute, and they're 8 fictional characters that all behave very differently with money. We have all of them within us. It just depends which one is taking center stage or taking the wheel of our financial life. We talked before the call about the innocent, which would be the one who is fearful of money, smiley on the outside, anxious on the inside, knows that they should probably be doing more with money, but not really sure where to start, quite indecisive when it comes to money, probably financially dependent on somebody else. And we will think about it tomorrow and put our head in the sand. That's one of them. And this is one of the reasons why I want to have these conversations, to actually realize that there are so many of us that have moments like this, or more than a moment. Our financial lives are being driven by that particular type. But there's another type, which I think you might, let's just see. There's another type called the martyr.
Oh, yeah.
And the martyr likes to look after everybody else before they look after themselves. Mm-hmm. Make sure everybody else is okay. There is quite often the time of going, well, if I don't do it, they're not going to, nobody else is going to do it. I'm going to just have to do it by myself. It can be sort of financially, or it can be other jobs. Sometimes the martyr can be also
down in shame.
No, don't smile and bring it out. Let's embrace it, because if we can't embrace it and be conscious of it, we can't change it, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. But the martyr can also be very good at giving and not very good at receiving. And sometimes can be a bit of a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes can find situations a little bit disappointing because a lot of people don't come up to our standards.
I can hear my daughter in my voice now.
But you see, it's interesting, isn't it? But the thing is, it can be quite exhausting if we're living in martyr quite a lot of the time. And Tracey, we're not ever calling you a martyr. We're just saying your martyr is taking the driving seat. And what would be really lovely is for you to be able to release that martyrdom a little bit and actually bring the magician and the warrior and give yourself a little bit of a break, really.
I think you're right. And I think something that I've learned over the years on the money side, and it's too late now because I made it so easy for my children.
Yeah.
They're better now, but when they were younger, they didn't have any value of money. And I can remember my son once saying, I want to do this, you can pay for, almost kind of like that. And I remember at that point having to go, if you want to go there and you want the money, and I wanted to give him the money, so it wasn't, I said, you've got to wash the car, iron the clothes and do all these jobs, and that will earn you the money to do what you needed to. And he'll hate me for this, but he was earning, and I don't think he earned it very well, but he was earning to get this money,
Yeah.
And so I think there is something I've learned about sometimes if you make it too easy, you're doing them more harm than good.
Yeah, well, they call it becoming an enabler, don't they?
Yeah. And I've learned that the hard way.
And I work with lots of people, and what can sometimes happen as well is that if you have a parent who's really a martyr, and grandparents are they're brilliant martyrs, right? Because it's always like, well, I've got to do it for the grandchildren, all this kind of stuff. What can tend to happen is you become an enabler, and then the children can become entitled and then fall into victim. And I've actually had calls with people that say, well, I am massively in debt and it's my dad's fault because he kept on giving me money. Right. And if he hadn't given me money, I wouldn't be dead. Which, one, we have to sort of claim responsibility for our own finances, don't we? But it's really interesting how it works. Let me just have a little look at the comments because they're flying up the screen. So Giles Watkins has said, hello, Giles. Great story, Tracey. Thanks for sharing. Fascinating to hear how you manage the leadership role with people that had known you and your dad for years. That was quite interesting. Well, your dad been there. Mia says again, so she's developed a mindset with large sums of money from the start of her career. So she's attracted that experience in her life. Nice point. Brilliant. Tracey comes across as such a balanced woman. What a lovely person. Oh, isn't that nice?
Thank you.
Take it.
Yeah.
Alison says, oh my God, I think the martyr sounds like me. I take on full responsibility financially, as I thought that was giving me financial independence, but it's exhausting sometimes. Anne says, me too, Alison. Mia says, yeah, me too. And Alison then goes, phew. Felt quite brave saying that here. Yes, you are. But that's the whole point, Alison. And she says, I'm glad I'm not on my own here. Isn't that exactly what we talked about before this conversation, Tracey? That the whole point of this is to say, I know as a money coach that once we can create a space whereby it's only filled with kindness, that there's no judgment and it's safe, we can talk about these things and if we can say that everybody has all these 8 characters within them, there is no dividing, because it doesn't matter how much money you've got. You can be the poorest person and be a money magician. Yeah. You can be the richest person and have the fool leading your money life. What was it Charles Dickens said? And this isn't the exact quote, but it basically went, if you earn £20 and you spend 19, you're going to be fine. If you earn £1 million and you spend £1 million and a pound, you're going to go into debt. Yeah. And it's as simple as that. That's fantastic. Yeah. So I want to then, bearing in mind where we've got in the conversation, I want to move on a little bit to the new Tracey. because we're not with Bristol Waste anymore.
No.
We are now out here on our own, and out here on your own, going into your new phase of your business, which I'm going to invite you to tell us about in just a second. But I want to do it with an angle of, now that we've identified that not all the time, but you have a tendency to have an active martyr.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to consider that in your new business? Because, I tell you what, first of all, tell us about your new business. Because actually it's really exciting to have somebody like you available. Right, go.
So I'll expand on that a little bit, just because I think mindset is a really important thing in all of this, in any aspect of our life, whether it's money or career or anything.
Totally.
So I set up as a business coach about 12 months ago, just as we went into lockdown. And in some ways it was okay, because I kind of thought, well, that gives me time to kind of, sort of start to build my business up, etc. And so I had moved out of the kind of corporate business world, and I decided I wanted to be a business coach, life coach, mentor, trainer. So kind of that mixture.
Perfect.
But I also spent a lot of that time kind of, imposter syndrome kind of kicked in big time, because I'd always been an active doer and making things happen in a workplace where I also had position and status.
Yeah.
Now I have none of that. And it's just me going, hello, I'm doing a service. Does anybody want to come and kind of join me?
Yeah.
And so I got in my own way quite a lot, because I would have these negative thoughts that said, can you really do this? Are you good enough?
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, yes, I am, and I can. And then 5 minutes later, it'd be, well, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
So I've gone through all of that, and I've had to really.
Which money type is that? Saying, am I good enough? Can I do it? How am I going to do this? It's important coming up, isn't it?
Yeah. And to me, when I do mindset, I use different characters, and one of them would be the victim, kind of like, but so I think I've had to do the work on the mindset to get my mindset to back to where it used to be, or even back to where it's, because I think when you're in a position, even if you've got the imposter syndrome or you've got the self-doubts, you can hide it, because you've already, you can hide behind a lot of things. So, there's a mask I'm wearing.
Yeah. Well, it's an identity shift, isn't it? It's a whole identity shift.
Yeah.
And I had exactly the same happen to me. For 13 years, I worked for the Digital Workplace Group. I presented myself. Hi, Fanny. Hi, Guy. It's Fanny here from the Digital Workplace Group. Can we talk about this amazing contract that we're just about to do with you for hundreds of thousands of dollars? And I could do that, and it was easy, and I could talk about it, and I was very, I felt very comfortable. And it's the same for you, right? So you had your job for all those years. You walk in every day. It's like a second home. You feel in place, and it's comfortable, and you've got the banner of Bristol Waste or whatever it is over your head. And then all of a sudden, and this happens to so many people, that we come out of that workplace and we are totally exposed.
Yeah.
And not only are we totally exposed as people, but we're also exposed in a new career that we haven't got all of those years experience boxed in that way that we're offering. We've had to repackage it. I mean, I remember, and you've also got to think about, I've got to put my sales head on, my marketing head on, my finance head on, my operations head on, my content head on, everything. Whereas we all had departments for people to do that. We had a team, didn't we?
Yeah.
So it's very, very difficult. And then you've got to go out and confidently price your services and charge people.
But it's also that when I worked in different places, and I might be selling the certain, not selling for money, but selling the concept or selling behavioural change that you want people to do, you're doing that on behalf of the organisation. Now I'm selling Tracey Carter, and that doesn't sit comfortably with me. It genuinely doesn't, because the martyr bit in service of others kind of just doesn't naturally fit. So there's the work that I've had to do to overcome that. But what it also does is it brings you back to kind of, what's your passion, what's your values, what will drive you to do what you need to do going forward to create what life you want. And so for me, because I've always worked in an environment where it's been quite a manual workforce. So you know, those guys, you know, they don't earn the biggest money. You know, they sometimes you see them going from week to week where they haven't got money. You know, when some people, if they were sick, they didn't get any pay. You know, that's terrible. You know, so I'm now trying to set up my business and sort of bring some others into it as well, where we can provide a more ethical kind of value added service at the cheaper end of coaching. You know, now there's a lot of issues with that, and I've still got to work some of this out. But I think I would like to see those people that never ever think about coaching or getting development or asking for help, actually getting that help to help them unblock some of their negative thinking and their kind of mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
So create that better life. It's out there for all of us. It shouldn't be, you know, people should know it is within their reach if they just know how to reach for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. We talked about this yesterday, and I think, you know, coaching should be available for everybody. And I think you and we both agree that there is some extremely expensive coaching out there that isn't necessarily as valuable as it should be.
Yeah.
That's carefully enough.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
And I think that we both know that when we talk about providing affordable coaching for people who wouldn't usually feel that they would be able to have it, it's coming from a place from the heart, and not just thinking, well, let's just offer something cheap out there so everybody can get it, which I think that sometimes happens when people sort of chuck out free courses and all this sort of thing.
But it's also the value, isn't it, Fanny? Because sometimes even if you say, I'll give you my coaching for free, people won't take it because they don't value it. So you've got to get that value and pricing right.
I run a course called Loving Me, Loving My Money, which is a small group of people. It's 12 weeks and it's 750 quid. And we do weekly calls, and there are some videos. Every time I run the course, I offer a place for free. Yeah. And every single time I've done that, apart from once, they haven't shown up.
Yeah.
And I give it to the people that I have thought really needed it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really interested because you're doing your project and I'm also doing this other project where I'm going to launch a course soon, which is very similar to that online project with me as well. But I'm going to do it for 100 people this time, and I'm going to do it for £100 because I want to try and attract people who have lost their jobs or their salary has been restricted during lockdown. And I'm working on it to actually get that conversation going around money, open the door to conversation to then build the confidence. So it's a similar kind of line than you're doing it. But and some people have gone, well, why are you doing that? Why are you putting all that time and effort into something? And you know, for something that people may not even value. And I'm thinking, well, do you know what? I want to try because I want to see if we can actually just try and build that community. And I think your message is sort of the same because you're going, look, Mr. Garage owner or whatever, or mobile hairdresser or whatever they might be, you can have this. Yeah. And we can talk about a logical way that we can help your business grow in the way that you want to, so that you can get the most out of it. Plus you're giving the most to your customers as well.
Yeah. But I think the interesting bit there, Fanny, and I think it's brilliant what you're doing because I think that needs to happen. I think the people that say, why are you doing that? They won't value it at £100. £100 is a lot of money to somebody to spend on, you know, kind of some sort of coaching around money and stuff. So that's quite a big investment for some. So I don't think we should decry that because I think people will sign up for that if they can, you know, first get over that hurdle if they've got to pay £100, you know. Because that will give them much more tools to be able to kind of, you know, develop their lives further.
Yeah, and even if you know, like for your service and my service, even if it's like 10 weeks coaching for £100, so what you're talking about, £10 a week, maybe even if you haven't learned anything else, you've got 5 or 6 really useful contacts that you can help, you can help each other. I mean, what do they say? You are going to be similar to the 5 people that you spend most time with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you want to be six. I was listening to a video by who's the guy that swears a lot? Pena. He's an American coach. And he started off the video shouting, as he always does. And he goes, "You want to know if you're going to be successful? Take a look at your friends."
Yeah. But
So
I think
another quick look at the comments.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec. Right. They're coming in. Right. So Giles says, "My personal belief is that imposter syndrome is human. The people who lack it, especially when they first go into a new role, I wouldn't want to work with." I like
love that. That's brilliant, Giles. Lovely. Yeah. True.
Anne agrees with that. And she says as well that it's Anne Hobbs. She says it's always harder to sell yourself. And then Alison says, "In my experience, especially women feel they need to build up credibility before they can sell themselves, even when they have so much experience to bring and help others with." That's really interesting, because I read that thing. It's that thing. If you have a job advertised, men will look at the job advert and go, "Yeah, I reckon I can do 60% of that. Brilliant. I'm going to go for it." Women will look at it and they'll go, "Oh, it looks really great, but I can't do that one thing. I won't bother."
Yeah. Well, I love the quote by Zig Ziglar that says, "You don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great."
Yes. That's amazing, isn't it? That's amazing. So if people want to work with you, do you know what I didn't do? I didn't put on this little thing here. Look, people want to work with you. There is Tracey's website. We're not going yet, so you're not off the hook yet. Don't worry about it. But there's your website. I think it would be fantastic to work with you. And actually, I let people into a secret. Tracey and I have been having conversations, and she is so helpful. I think we help each other right now because we're both in different stages. I'm a bit more confident in my business where I am now, but you have so much, massive amounts of experience and things to learn from, which says, we're quite a good match at the moment. It's quite good. Maybe we should set up a business together.
Absolutely.
Right, I'm now, because I have this list of questions that I keep in the background for our conversation. I'm going to throw one at you.
Go on then.
All right. What advice would you give to a 15-year-old now? 15-year-old you now?
So what advice would I give to me now? And it's interesting because I've done a lot of thinking over the last 12 months.
I bet you have.
I think the first thing I would say to a 15-year-old me would be, work on your mindset now and really go for what you want to go and believe in yourself, because you can achieve it. You don't need anybody else to tell you. In fact, there's a saying that I've heard a few times now is, what other people think of you is none of your business.
Yes.
And I think learn that from a young age.
Yes, I completely agree.
So it would be doing that, and it would also be in kind of making sure that you always develop yourself throughout life. I think I did lots of learning on the job, but I don't think I did enough personal development and learning whilst I was busy working. And I think the other thing, and I drone on to my kids about this as well, is make sure you've got a good pension now when you're in your 20s, because believe you me, I'm now 55, and it certainly pays, if you do that from a young age.
Yeah.
And do the small investment things throughout your life. So for me, I didn't do things like pay off a bit extra on my mortgage each month, especially on the months when I could afford to. And gosh, I wish I had of, because the amount of years that would have taken off and the amount of interest that would have taken off, you don't realise it. And these are things I say now with hindsight.
Well, that's how we learn, isn't it? And this is how we help people, because we've made all the mistakes, right? And we can help people make those mistakes.
Yeah. So even if you can only afford £20 a month or £50 a month to pay off on your mortgage or put into a pension, do it. Because believe you me, when you get to 55 and you want to do something completely different with your life, you'll need those things to fall back on.
What are your thoughts on ISAs, Tracey? ISA?
Yeah, now see, I've not been so what, but the other bit of advice I would probably give myself at 15 is learn more about stocks and shares and stuff like that, because I never did. So I would save money, what interest you're getting and stuff now. So I never played some of those games with kind of ISAs and bonds in, stocks and shares and stuff like that. So I'm probably more on the ignorant side of that than I should be.
And I'm going to stick my neck out now, and I'm going to say, I think that's quite a common approach for people in the corporate world, for people who are employed and, going down that I've got a job and that kind of route, which I describe it like that, which is probably a bit clunky. That's probably because I haven't ever had a job really like that. So I don't really know. I don't come from that experience. Well, not for 20 years anyway. So it's a bit of a tricky one. Okay. Have you ever been paid too much?
Have I ever been paid too much? Yes. I can't remember some of the specifics, but I know at different times I would have been overpaid for one thing or another.
Now, are you talking about being overpaid by mistake, or are you talking about in your mindset you were paid too much for the value that you gave?
Oh, right. Okay. Right. So let me take the value one. It's funny, isn't it? Because even though I could have had imposter syndrome, or I've had imposter syndromes more recently and stuff, no, I always felt I earned the money I earned. So I never felt I'd been over. So even though I've earned good money, I've worked bloody hard for that, and I've always gave my all, probably sometimes too much.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't you? Because you've got your nice little martyr sitting on your shoulder that's always doing that giving, right?
Yeah. But in saying that, my kids would have said, my kids would said to me, you were always in, I was always in work, and I was always in work, because my job was who I am. And, we talked about kind of, that was the old me. I've now found a different me, and I like the new me, but I have realized there's a lot of things we learn about ourselves through life, and kind of, the one thing I would say is make sure you're present in your life, because I spent a lot of time not being present.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We're two women of a very similar age. I'm slightly older than you as well, which is like the kid. But I tell my kids all the time now, please don't wait to do what I've only realized in the last 5-10 years. Please don't wait. Yeah. Please see yourself as beautiful and gorgeous, and that you've got lovely bodies and all the chances in the world if you want them. Please see that now. And like you said, be present, do the mindset work. Hey, Jamie Breeze has just joined us.
Hi, Jamie.
Jamie Breeze. Yeah, there he is. That's good. So I'm going to throw another one at you.
Yeah.
What? No, that's too much of a bigger one now. What did you learn about money from your mum and dad?
So I learned from my mum and dad. So my mum. So I think my mum had me when she was sort of 16. So she wasn't married. So my mum and dad got married sort of slightly after I'd come along.
Oh, that's nice.
So I think my mum didn't have a lot, but she had a real strong sense of value and principles.
Yeah.
And I think people had sort of said to her that she wouldn't make a good mother because she was 16. And I think she had the determination that said, I'll bloody show you, I will, And so I had to be perfect, so she kind of almost from a young age installed that in me.
Yeah.
But also one of the earliest memories, kind of because I was coming on here, I was thinking about money. Yeah. And one of the earliest memories I've got around this was I remember my mum had gone out and she dropped her bag or her purse, and she had what was about £40 in her purse, which was that week's rent money.
Yeah.
And it blew all down the street.
Oh.
And it was horrific. We all went out and we were all looking in the hedges and everything else. And I think we found one £10 note. So she'd lost them at like £30, and she was devastated because, that was kind of like everything at that time. So I think I always learned that sense of how easy money can be gone, even when you haven't got a lot, So I think that has driven a lot of my behaviours throughout my life.
What do you know? That's just the most wonderful experience, because you see, so many people have negative experiences with of money as their first memory, but you seeing that and actually it was nobody's fault that happened. So
No.
there's no portion to blame. There's no shame. You can see how upset your mum is, and yet you get that a fantastic value of the lesson of going, that's how easy it can go if you're not careful with it. But it's not done in a sort of threatening way.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
But I think what that also did is, I remember I got my first job when I was 12 or 13, and I would then go to the local hardware and I would put 20 pence away every couple of weeks.
Yes.
And I remember buying my mum a vase that cost £1.25.
Right.
And that was the first gift I ever bought her. It was probably hideous, and so I thank her for keeping it for as long as she did before it smashed.
Yeah.
But I also then, by the time I was sort of in full-time employment, I had 3 jobs. I would go cleaning at 4 o'clock in the morning at the old Halifax building. I would then go to a work experience program I was on in my full-time job at that time, and then I'd work either cleaning on an evening or in bar work as I got older. So I always, when I was younger, I did 3 jobs so as I could have the money I wanted.
Was that too much?
No, I don't think so, because I think that's where the work ethic comes from. And some of those jobs, the clean jobs I used to do, my mum would come with us and we'd go cleaning. We'd have the music on blaring, the 60s music, and then add something to eat after and eat all our wages, so it was fun.
And that is exactly what I knew you would say, because you have it absolutely encompasses the whole of you, that when you go to work and you go to do something, you do it with a happy heart and with a view of the right outcome and the fact that you're doing something and you enjoy it. And I think that's amazing. I think that's really, really good. I love that about you. So good. Really good. What about you? Do you remember what your dad was like?
My dad was very different than my mum. So my dad, he would have come home with some lock-off gear or something like that, and my mum would be, we're not having that in this house. You can get that out right now, And so I kind of had the 2 extremes.
Excellent. Okay, look, I'm going to wrap this up now because we've been on and people need to go back to things. I'm just going to have another look at the comments. Mia said, sorry, it's so interesting. It's like all the other transitions in life. When we leave this is going back to when you were working and changing these energy shifts, these identity shifts. It's like all the other transitions in life. When we leave the safety of the home to start school, then leave the safety of our parents to live on our own, all the changes challenge our sense of self and boundaries. And we forget that each stage and experience strengthens and expands our skills and value. Very true. Very true. Very true. I'm really, really hoping that both our ventures flourish, because I think it's going to be not just fantastic value for all the people that work with us, but quite a notch of success in our lives, really. Don't you think it's going to be a proper win-win? Because you're doing it as you this time, as Tracey Carter, and I'll be doing it as me, Fanny Snaith. So how can we help you today? Is there anybody in particular that you're looking to speak to? Is there anybody that you're inviting to give you a call?
So I would just say I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody that thinks I can add some value to them. Anybody that knows any organizations that have lots of employees that would benefit from having some development, newly created supervisors and stuff, because I do a lot around management and leadership as well. So really just kind of, for me, if I can add value, then I want to be there doing that.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Tracey, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure, Fanny. Thank you.
Really nice to speak to you. And this is Fanny Snaith signing off from Lunchtime on LinkedIn. I will be back tomorrow for the second in our 3-part series with Dennis Harhalakis and Will Rainey, where we're talking about how to talk to our children about money, which is always an interesting topic. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Again, Tracey, thank you so much. And I thank you everybody for joining us, everybody who's been signing in. If you are watching this on replay, if you could put replay in the comments, I would really appreciate it. And just reach out for a chat if you'd like to. Thanks again, everybody. Take
Thanks,
care.
Annie. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.